Hi. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. We're just about to get started.
Hey
Hi.
Shruti, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm at Tamra Coorg and so excited to speak to you while I'm
Yeah.
here.
I hope you're enjoying your time. I'm very jealous.
Mhm. I'm loving every second of it. We've kept really busy, yoga in the morning, plantation walks, we planted some trees. Um, Honestly, we've had a really, really good time. We had a fun workshop, of course. We made little terrariums, and we talked about kind of low impact gifting. So lots has happened over a short time. I hope you're doing well.
Yes, doing well in a little bit drizzly Bangalore. The weather feels, I guess, a little bit like Coorg, but of course, it's not as green and lush and all that. So I am very jealous that you're also getting that amazing coffee that we serve there as well. So I know
Oh
you
yeah,
made
the
some
Bella
coffee
coffee.
scrubs as well, right?
I'm sorry?
You made some coffee scrubs as well.
Yes, we did that yesterday. We kind of talked about how we can kind of repurpose things and use your coffee grounds from, your morning cup of coffee to make a really lovely scrub out of it and just add a bunch of oils. And it's really great because it exfoliates your skin while kind of the oils kind of nourishes back any nutrients. So yeah, it was really fun. It was pretty hands-on. We got our hands dirty. Everyone walked away with a little coffee scrub. Heard some good reviews about it this morning at breakfast. So, so
In fact, last night I was able to attend a really amazing dinner where they were talking about roasting vegetables over coffee grounds, over used coffee grounds. The idea being that you're cooking over like almost like compost, right? So you're cooking over the like soil, like really
yeah.
amazing. So the idea of like, recycling that as well. And the vegetables were delicious. So I think there's a lot of ways in which we can explore how coffee and any other sort of like waste can be reused, right? So
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
yeah. So I have been really looking forward to this conversation because I think it is always amazing when you're talking to another leader who from whom you can learn so much about. And when I think both of us work in spaces which are very aligned in terms of thinking, and so I've been looking forward to this, really excited to kind of get into the questions. And of course, I'm sure there'll be questions from those who are watching, and so we invite those as well. So should we just maybe start off with introductions of each other? I mean, why don't you go ahead first and then
Yeah,
I can.
sounds good. Sure. So I'm Seher. I'm the founder of Bare Necessities. We're a social business based out of Bangalore, and we're here to kind of reimagine consumption to make conscious consumption kind of the default and not the exception. And we do that with kind of relying heavily on ethical sourcing of lots of raw materials, but also having a completely woman-run manufacturing team. A lot of them, it's their first job. So, that also means financial inclusion, access to health insurance, etc. And we're also here to just make content around sustainability very fun and accessible. And that could be through workshops like we did today at Tamara, or even at schools and corporates.
Amazing, thank you. And I'll just
And
introduce
Shruti,
myself.
yeah, please just tell us about yourself.
So I run Tamara Leisure Experiences. We're a responsible hospitality brand focused on building and operating hotels and resorts, which are truly responsible in the way that we approach our business. So we look at using sustainable materials, designing in a way which is efficient in the buildings that we create, and then of course operating them in conscious ways, which are bringing all stakeholders to the table, considering the communities in which we exist, considering the environments in which we exist. And then, of course, again, spreading the word of the idea of sustainability and how everyone can be a part of that, and how also that it is the way that business should be going forward, that we must all businesses should be thinking about this idea of consciousness in people, planet, and of course in profitability as well. So
Awesome.
Sahed, we both, I know, have some questions for each other. So I'm gonna go first, if you don't mind. I'll
Sure.
ask you because I'm very, very curious. You know, I don't know how many people on here know about your educational background, but you have, you know, you've been sort of rooted in this idea of environmental sensitivity through your education and your personal choices, and of course your early career as well. How did that translate into entrepreneurship? Because I think you've described yourself as an accidental entrepreneur at some point. So what was it like? What drove you to make that switch from living a zero waste life to actually running a business which represents and incorporates that?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. Yeah, so honestly, I think I've been an environmental nerd like my entire life. I really wanted to be an environmental professor actually, and I had like these really elaborate plans of kind of teaching, surfing science, where you get to learn the ecosystem of maybe the gorgeous Pacific Ocean and the kelp forests within it, and then also then learn how to dive and and surf around it. Um, and then honestly, I think one of the best things that happened to me is that I actually got rejected from the PhD program at Cambridge after my master's. And I had to, had time to kind of re-engineer and think what I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to be in the sustainable arena, and I knew I wanted to create some sort of impact. And for me, two areas that really, really excited me were energy access and to waste management. Um, so actually, the best thing is that two of these kind of elements that I love collided in one project. I was working at the solar energy company, and we work with disproportionately underserved communities that don't have any energy needs, or we're trying to fill in some sort of energy gap. And that could be, public health centers, it could be schools, a really, really wide area of projects. But I got the opportunity to work with a waste warrior or a waste picker community, and very, very close to Bangalore International Airport. Of course, lived in completely informal, blue top home housing, no access to electricity, no access to food, water. I mean, the list kind of goes on. But I also kind of got to know the community really well. Like I got to know them all by name, how many kids they have, what time they start their day in the morning, what is the most high value recyclable, how much does 1 kg of cardboard get people? And I think while I started to work so closely and intimately with this community, I got to actually really put aside all of my kind of elitist academic perspective, to be honest, and just kind of look at our waste problem from a really kind of ground up lens that I think I had been missing my entire academic career. And I obviously, having built and knowing everyone by name, knowing, Rahman and his two daughters and all of this stuff, and just watching him early in the morning kind of collect broken glass and sanitary napkins and all of this stuff. And, looking at these little tiny mountains of trash everywhere on that route in the morning that he gets on. So actually, I would literally follow them on my cycle in the morning at 5 a.m. And then 5 to 9, quickly shower and then head to work at 10. And something kind of just shifted inside. And I said, you know what, I really need to try and live in alignment with their values. I've said that I care about the environment. I've studied it. I've been part of people's movements and climate action kind of collective movements. And I just wanted to live a lifestyle that just felt right for me, and that was very congruent with all of these values. And so I just, on a very personal level, started to live a more low impact lifestyle. And slowly, like my colleagues kind of caught on, and different people were kind of asking me, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you not saying yes to that straw?" Or like, "Oh," and slowly, I kind of was thinking that, you know what, actually, I'm surrounded by lots of amazing people, and chances are they also want to live a more low impact lifestyle and a more sustainable lifestyle. So at that time in 2016, there wasn't kind of sustainability wasn't this Instagram phenomena it is today, and I thought that maybe it could be really nice to create a kind of an online platform with sustainable products that are designed not to land up in the oceans or landfills. And that's how Bare Necessities was born.
That's amazing. I love that you started from the ground up in a way, right? Because I do think that, that whole idea of like bringing stakeholders together that I mentioned, like it really, I think you need to understand really what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Before you start to make any interventions. And because I think there is this sort of, sometimes there is this perspective of, oh, we're educated, so we know what's best, right? But
Yeah.
without really understanding and including those voices, it's just, I mean, we really fully won't be able to come up with solutions which are meaningful, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Honestly, I'd love to ask you, I think the whole mission of Tamara, and I've got to witness it firsthand this past weekend, and really is to be responsible in the hospitality sector, to kind of change the narrative that maybe we've seen for so long, and to truly balance the people, planet, profit. So maybe if you can tell us a little bit about how you balance those three Ps and maybe some ground realities of, how easy is it sometimes, how difficult is it sometimes, and how do you do that?
yeah, so thank you. So I think, the idea of people like of the, what we it's the triple bottom line, right? People, planet, profit. It's an idea which has existed for several years, but I think that when you want to apply it within a business, and particularly within a traditional business, which has, been existing for centuries, it can be a little tricky, right? Because you have to relook at the way that it's been thought about, right? That all of this has been thought about. And so we really, we placed this idea of sustainability from the get-go when Tamra was getting, conceived and then informed and so on. But through the years, there's been this steady learning curve as to what is really needed to make it into reality and to be able to scale it. Because I do think that a lot of these ideas, it is much simpler when it is a founder-driven organization, which is within a couple of people, but it's a much larger sort of monster to stay
Yeah.
consistent with when you scale, right? And today our organization is 700 people plus. And so how do you make sure that everybody is living this, understanding it, and then of course incorporating it into the decision making of every day? So we've had certainly a steady learning curve, and I think there's so much more for us to learn on this path. One of the things that we've done more recently, I guess in the last couple of years, to just make it more institutionalized is to really think about the goals that we're setting for ourselves as an organization, which then translate into individual KRAs, right? So this is it's very businessy in that sense, but it is effective, right? So when we set our goals for the organization, not only do we set revenue and profitability goals, but we also set goals for ourselves around sustainability. And that has to do with either community outreach, it may have to do with environmental sustainability, it has to do with waste reduction, it has to do with consumption reduction, it has to do with converting some of the bad practices that we may have, like around, for instance, fossil fuel consumption into more clean energy consumption, things like that, right? And it's tricky because each of our properties, of course, are not the same, right? They are unique in terms of where they're located and the opportunities that you have in terms of doing some of this work. So, instance, the Tamarakur, where you are right now, we experience severe power cuts all the time. And so our fuel consumption as a result of that is actually substantially high, and it bothers me on a daily basis. We need to, so we're in this on this path of actually incorporating more clean energy solutions into that property, because we know that it will be much more impactful there, and we're trying things out, experimenting to see how that can be done effectively before then we roll it out to more of our resort properties, across. So there's a lot of experimentation around this whole idea, but this is one way in which I really believe that at least we can start to drive these messages down. I think there's also a lot of education, which happens, of course, around, you asked about challenges, and I think this is the one big challenge that I think probably your organization also faces, right? You have to educate people, you have to educate your employees, you have to educate your guests as to why this is important, right?
Yeah.
It is something which is there's been a way of living for so long, right? In plastic straws, plastic cutlery. These are things which have become so normalized and all of that. And so to change people's mindsets to, and to make them understand why is this important. And even though, yes, our footprint and our impact it is small when you consider like the whole galaxy of issues that exist. But what does it mean to be part of the solution and part of the positivity, I guess, right? Pushing towards that positivity rather than being more part of the problem. And so there's a lot of time which needs to be spent around educating everybody into thinking differently, approaching differently, and then acting differently, right? Because finally, strategies, strategy and sort of us talking about purpose and all of that is up in the air. But really, when it gets down to acting on it, that's where the real truth of the meat is. And so getting us from strategy to execution can often be a bit challenging, but absolutely worth it, completely worth all the energy and effort that goes into it.
Yeah, amazing. Honestly, I really loved. I visited the waste management center and I saw the daily dump kind of kambas and tumblers in action, which was phenomenal. In the rooms, I saw that the laundry bags are made out of old sheets. Again, super, super amazing. I heard the food waste over here is something that is a point of discussion every day to try and have a way of kind of reducing it. And of course, and compared to other hotels, you're already doing really like a fab job. And then composting whatever is there. So I mean, I got to see a lot of things, even the electric buggies. That's again a great way to kind of look at kind of the carbon emission piece that you're looking at, which is again you already have a solution on ground. But I totally understand about adding more renewable energy to the mix. So yeah, I think you're obviously already doing a fab job. So just wanted to give you a big shout out on all of the amazing initiatives that I got to also witness that balance these three Ps.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think one of the parts of our mission is also to say that this is not unique to just resorts, right? I mean, in Coorg, you're in this very large estate. There's 180 acres. And so, like, for instance, all the compost that we create from our food waste goes straight back into our own land. But even in our business hotels, there's so much that can be done to reduce waste, reduce consumption, and bringing the community inside. And so it's I think a large part of our mission is to really prove that these are sustainable models in the sense of like they are resilient and they are good and they make businesses better and
Yeah.
and really put that message out there that it can be done. This industry, we can be better, and here's one example of that. From your perspective, right? I mean, from the business perspective, what do you think? What were some of the most striking learnings that you've had around, in terms of when you've translated the sort of personal story that you've had, right, about everything that you went through in that early part of your journey into this business of creating conscious products, sustainable operating models, and such?
Yeah. Honestly, I think some of my learnings were one about like really strong communication and very authentic communication from day one. That kind of ensures that everyone on your team, whether they are, in the manufacturing unit or if they're in ops or whether they're like, more front facing and more social media, and kind of sales and marketing kind of teams, everyone speaks a very cohesive language and is kind of really like bound by the values that are very shared. So I think that's something that has been really, really important learning for us. So actually, last Friday of every month, we do a thing called TGIF, and it's something I actually saw at the Google campus where anyone could ask Larry and Sergey anything they wanted on Fridays, right? And it's a very like open, transparent kind of system, and we've tried to incorporate that. And we encourage anyone to ask anything. You can ask us revenue numbers. You can ask us what's the future. You can literally like no question is out of bounds. And I think that also helped in terms of making everyone feel like it's a safe space to ask these questions and to get everything answered, and just make sure that we're communicating so authentically within our team that everyone is, maybe it kind of translates to all levels and all kind of functions of the team. So I think that was a big learning for me, because maybe My first few years, maybe I kind of assumed that, okay, if you're here, you kind of get it. But I think doing more explicit workshops around, what we're doing, um, in-house as much as we do out-house, and kind of investing in people is something that I truly learned while running Bear. So I think that those were really good ones for me. I think for you, I would love to ask, I think, sustainable or more conscious tourism is the future, and that's kind of undoubtedly and undisputably true. What are your thoughts on it, and what do you think the future looks like of, more sustainable tourism? And yeah, any thoughts on this you'd like to share? I'd love to hear.
Yeah, no, before I jump into that, I also wanted to tell you that so we also do something very similar to
Oh, yeah.
TGIF. We do something called Tamra Huddle.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
I'm a bit like cricket junkie, and so so we call it huddle. And but the idea is that all of our Tamarites kind of get together. Now it's virtual, right? And because we're in so many places, but we get together and it's exactly what you said, right? It's about transparency and saying that, hey, this is where we are, this is where we're at, welcoming new people in, all of that stuff, but also celebrating some of these achievements that we do make, not just
Yeah.
on, but also on, these concepts and these initiatives that we take up. So I think that, it's a very powerful tool, what you're talking about, right? Just making sure that that internal communication is really, really strong and open. And there is this sort of channel for up and down communication rather than just top down, and making sure that communications channels are open. So I'm super glad to hear that we're kind of similarly. Yeah, no, sustainable tourism, I think it is really the way of the future. And interestingly, I think India is particularly leading the way in certain fronts because we see that the demand for sustainable tourism is actually much higher in India than it is in other places, right? So there was this survey that was done towards the end of COVID when, I mean, probably right after the third wave of COVID or so, wherein it showed that, the tourists of India are far more invested in finding properties or destinations which are more sustainable than most other places. And so I
Wow.
think yeah, there is a consciousness towards sustainable tourism, which is renewed, and there's a lot more and there's more demand for it, which I think in itself is a phenomenal way of getting business and and destinations to move in that direction. But it is complicated, right? This is not a easy, bandage like slap-ons type of thing. I mean, there is a lot that goes into the idea of sustainable tourism, starting from how do you um, how do you make a destination sustainable? And I've done some work around this, right? So, for instance, how do you preserve the culture of a
Mm.
destination? How do you preserve the authenticity of the local food? How do you show
Yeah.
respect for the heritage, the history of a destination? How do you make sure that there's no over tourism? That's a
Yeah.
huge problem in some places, right? And we're seeing that in certain places within India itself, like Goa has seen this massive, over tourism that's happened over the years. And so you have to, it has to be done very consciously. And there, again, I go back to this idea of you need to bring stakeholders together to really manage it, right? So you need government, you need policymakers, you need industry,
Amazing.
and you need tourists to all align, right? And I think that that's the possible challenge that we have now. And you see that certain places are doing a better job, and certain places I think are not quite there in terms of their thinking, right? I do think that there's a lot of work that needs to just be done in terms of bringing people together to the table to have these discussions because the idea behind sustainable tourism is that you're creating a place which is in the same form or better form as it is today for the next generation, right? That's essentially what sustainability is and sustainable tourism is. So if we are not all sort of on that same page, it's going to end up sort of as an issue. But I do think that in general, I have seen that um, industry, hospitality industry, travel agents, like everybody sort of, all of that. Like we've all become a lot more aware and invested and having, making better choices around this. And I think that if guests continue to advocate
Yeah.
for us to be better, that's going to push us much, much faster and harder to get to a point where this is more meaningful. And it's happening much more at scale. So yeah, so I think it is the way of the future, and but I do think there's several challenges sort of in our way to get to that point where we truly are sustainable in sort of all of these different facets. Um, yeah, I mean, we think a lot about, for instance, something like water sustainability, which I think is a huge issue that I think all of us like this year. Yeah, yeah. But it, yeah, I mean, that's one thing, right? But it is also about like, so like I think personally, we're all experiencing it at home this last year, right? Drought,
Absolutely.
floods, like all of that. Like, so I mean, we all have a part to play in making, with coming up with solutions for this. And so, yeah, so I think, I mean, I'm rambling a little bit, but
No,
I think
no, no.
it's,
It's all super meaningful.
yeah, so I do think that, yeah, so we're on a path, and it's good to see that people are just much more conscious about it than they were in the
Yeah.
past. How?
Definitely. I think two things really stood out to me. One is about the Goa example, because it kind of became this like destination for everyone in the pandemic to kind of spend some time. And I was actually speaking to locals when I was there, and they said that, it's just become unaffordable for us because people with really fancy tech jobs, etc., are spending time here. And it's just kind of driven the prices so high that just the local joints that we would go to or anything, like just the cost of living in Goa for us locals who've been here for 30 years and more, it's just become so inaccessible and unaffordable. And then the second point, you talked about water and kind of water sustainability. And, I've been reading about so many things about climate action, about climate change. And it says kind of the next few wars that are going to happen in our time are not going to be for power or boundaries. It's going to be about water and access to clean drinking water. And I think that is just staggering and it's just shocking. And hopefully that kind of encouraged us all to be a little bit more conscious and mindful about our water consumption on a day-to-day level, but also think about it from a more systemic and kind of large scale level as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something which it keeps me up at night a little bit, like it is like this really big problem, and I do feel that we need to all sort of be thinking about it a lot more and coming out with effective solutions. I wanted to ask you about your creative process, right? Because a lot of, I think, what we do in experiences has to do with creativity and keep it and like a culture of creativity, right? Because it can't be just one person. It's got to be a whole organization of people who are really focused on coming out with creative solutions and, like you said, I mean, you guys work a lot on content, and so you need to keep it engaging as well. So I'd love to know a lot more about how do you source your ideas? Where do your ideas sort of, where are they inspired from? And how do you test them and how do you build them? And then, of course, how do you create that culture of conscious creativity across your organization?
That's honestly a really, really good question, and no one has ever asked me that before. Um, I think one is the products. Okay, products is our bread and butter, and I think if you think about everyday FMCG products that we all use kind of on a daily basis and kind of the legacy behind it, in a nutshell, I feel like they haven't seen a lot of innovation in the past 30 years. It's packaged in plastic, has lots of kind of ingredients. A lot of them maybe not so good for ourselves, the planet, or the environment. Um, and I think so. One is how do we bring creativity to products? I think that's kind of really, really the key that holds us all. And then how do we communicate that and the values associated with it and where we're sourcing the raw materials? So I think the core and the heart is the products, and then everything else kind of follows. So I think we just launched this really cool new product, which is essentially a powder, and it comes in this little compostable little sachet, and it is just the 10% of the active ingredients you actually need, and you just put that little powder in a dispenser with water from your own tap. and you have dishwash and hand wash. And if you think about traditional FMCG products, especially like laundry detergent, right? It's big, it's 1 kg, maybe, it's really bulky, it's so heavy, it's really inefficient on a space front. The logistic costs are higher, and it makes a logical sense. We're basically paying to ship water across the country. So the idea was to kind of put that model upside down, just challenge it and try and create products that are just so far away from that traditional format. Um, and then we actually used upcycled wine bottles that we worked with kind of wastewater communities to get, etc. Printed on the bottle itself, so we don't need packaging. Again, another kind of format that's really challenging the current FMCG products, right? Because everything has a sticker and a label and all of that. So we printed on the glass directly, and so I think that was really that process from start to finish, from sourcing to creation to then the packaging. We've even used actually vegetable dyes ink to print the labels, and it's in a compostable sachet, and inside it does not have plastic, it has tree resin, so actually you can just put it into your compost. So packaging to how the consumer uses it, paper tape, of course, to ship it out, etc. So just looking at it from start to finish, and then communicating that authentic story of why we're doing it, why is it designed in a certain way, has been something that has really been the heart of Bare Necessities. And then I think in terms of, the storytelling of maybe, Bhuvana, who makes some of our products. So, she used to be, she worked in a chemistry lab at a school as like a lab assistant for so long, and now she makes some of our shampoo bars, etc. And she's like, it's so exciting to use chemistry for the first time in my life. After working like 8 odd years in a chemistry lab, to actually create something that I can use. So kind of making sure when we're telling even those like those stories, maybe those intangibles, maybe that won't be shared on an Excel spreadsheet to communicate their success or anything, but that's what makes us so kind of human as a brand. And if you think about it, at the end of the day, what is a brand? A brand is made out of amazing people, right? And if we don't tell the story of the amazing people who are building this with us, I think that would be a disservice to what we're doing. So I think the storytelling element of everyone on the team has been something that we've also tried to keep intact, but in a respectful and mindful way. I mean, we of course ask, and some of the women kind of come to work in abayas and maybe don't want to be photographed, but maybe someone does, and so kind of making sure we're doing it in a way that's not like poverty tourism or that is misplaced, making sure it's kind of done very mindfully, and that is highlighting our story, but also making sure it's in a way that's very kind of ethical and just and in line with who we are and authentic to what we want to communicate.
Absolutely. We're the same way, actually. In fact, I think I think people are what make our business, really. I mean, finally, I truly believe that service is one of the most amazing things that you can dedicate your life to. And so to spend any time in that space, I think is a remarkable thing. And I think the stories are so powerful, right? And I do think also that, the people that come into, I think what it seems is the people that you work with and a lot of the people that I work with, these are people that are coming from very middle class families, lower middle class families, and they're really, coming upwards, and I think it is important to be very respectful and maintain that dignity of the people, of course, that we work with. And then I think when you do showcase some of the good that we do across, right, even if it is in CSR and things like that, the respect and dignity are so important in that whatever we showcase has to be done in a way which is classy in a way, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not right. We're not trying. I mean, this is it finally again, like it goes back to purpose, right? And why we do this. It is not to show it's not to kind of
Yeah.
pump ourselves up, I guess, but it is more to say that this is a good way to be, right? And to
Yeah.
show it more than anything. Yeah, so I love that. I think that, more and more we talk, I see more and more.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so Shruti, I want to ask you that, the lots of your properties, the Tamara one, the Kodaikanal one, they have this deep sense of space. I mean, I'm talking to you from the Tamara Coorg room, and I'm overlooking, the gorgeous Western Ghats. It's super biodiverse. There's some gorgeous birds outside my window. I mean, it has a deep sense of space and place. And if you think about the hospitality arena, a lot of them kind of pride themselves on having this one international vibe that actually just is, for me, just the opposite of a sense of space. Because I could be in a hotel room in Dubai or in California or in, I don't know, Hong Kong, and I would not know where I am because the room looks exactly the same, right? And of course, that touches upon so many elements, but why is that something that is, so integral to your brand? And tell us more about that approach, because I think a lot of us can learn a lot from it.
Yeah, so I think I don't know where it started. I have to, I honestly like, when I think back, like, how did we come up with it? It is something that is truly intrinsic, and I think it also keeps it interesting for us, right, and challenging for us because I truly believe like you cannot take our Coorg property and put it in Kodaikanal, and you can't
Yeah.
take that building as such and put it in Coorg. It just wouldn't make any sense, right? Because they are intrinsically of that place. Like our Kodaikanal property is actually built around a building which was the fourth building ever built in Kodaikanal, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
it's got true history and heritage, and the number of people that have gone through there, like there are stories, and so to take that away from that property
Mhm.
would be an absolute shame. And again, with the Tamara Coorg, when we came in, I mean, the way this property was built is, I mean, it is beyond, right? It's an engineering feat because it was just wilderness in a sense.
Yeah.
There was a coffee plantation, but there's also forest, and there were no roads, and so everything was built from absolute scratch. And we were very clear that we wanted it to feel like the buildings that we built were integrated into that property so that people could feel what it felt like to be in nature, not to take the nature out and then put build, you know what I mean, not to do that, but
Yeah.
build to maintain it. And then by doing that, of course, and being conscious about how we lit the property, how much noise we make on the property, we were also able to maintain the biodiversity, and
Mhm.
the wilderness around it. And so, there's and that itself, I mean, that is such it's such an important thing, right, for people to feel connected to nature when they come to this property. And so it's always been something which is incredibly important. But and again, like I don't think it is limited to our approach in resorts, right? And again, I think that there is opportunity to do this in literally every kind of hotel that we build, right? So for instance, we're currently building our Lilac brand of hotels, which is our mid-segment hotel
Yep.
in Guruvayur. And that
Mhm.
hotel, in the way that it's designed, is keeping very much in mind the kind of people who go on pilgrimage to a
Mhm.
place like Guruvayur. They travel with families. They travel,
Mhm.
travel in packs in a sense, and they
Yeah.
need to, you need the bathrooms are designed in such a way that you can have one person in the shower, you can have one person using the mirror, you can have one person getting dressed all at the same time because you need that within a family type of room, so I think that you have to be very conscious of where you are in order to create products which are particular to that place and the functionality and the strengths of that destination. And by doing that, not only do you respect the destination, but you also provide your guests with an experience that they cannot have anywhere else,
Yeah.
right? And I think that more and more people want that, they are looking for that uniqueness. So what
Mhm.
you experience in Coorg, you can't necessarily experience in a Chikmagalur or an Uti or any place like that, right? You have to come
Very
to
true.
for that particular type of, that experience. And that, it is just, I think it's kind of just, to me, it's obvious, right? It is something what should be done. It takes work. I mean, it's not,
Sure does.
it takes research, right? I think, like you said, in your work as well, like you need, I mean, you do have to spend a lot of time sort of researching it, and you cannot just create sort of a cookie cutter template, which you then go and
Yeah,
implement.
definitely. Yeah.
So it is sort of it is a collaborative, process as such. But I do think it pays off, and I think particularly in resorts, which are sort of places where people have leisurely time.
Yeah.
It's like it to me, it's kind of like this has to be the way it's done because people are taking so much time out of their busy lives to come and visit
Mhm.
these places. They're spending so much money. It's truly like, time has become this
Most important currency.
exactly, it's invaluable,
Mhm.
right? So when somebody is coming to our property and they're spending time in that property, like, the way that we can respect that is by making sure that the experiences that they have are truly unique and memorable and
Yeah.
distinctive. So yeah, so that's the way that we've kind of just approached our work from the get-go. And I do think it creates sort of a niche in that sense, right? Of within sort of the whole hospitality space and such. And also, I mean, the other side of this is also that again, like, when it comes to when you do that, you are also in that sense also being responsible, right? That whole idea around responsible hospitality, like it goes back to
Absolutely.
saying that we are respectful of the place, the culture, the heritage, the history, the what was there before us, and what will eventually, one day possibly be there after us, right? So it is about maintaining that and making sure that all of that is preserved for future generations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think honestly, you've done a really good job of doing that. The naturalist who took us on our morning kind of plantation walk, um, he is of the region, really knows everything. I mean, the Kodwa food that we enjoyed while we were here, there've been so many things that have really showed me that you have really truly celebrated, um, what is local. Even the kind of the Blossom to Brew tour is housed in this gorgeous 75-year-old little house amidst the property. So, I mean, there's just so much that has been preserved so mindfully. And I think that's something that I've thoroughly enjoyed. So, I think you answered that question so beautifully, and I hope many more people get to experience what I got to experience this past weekend. And hopefully, if there are any people in the room, in this live who are also thinking about sustainable entrepreneurship, and it could be on the product front, it could be on the hospitality front, but I just hope that there have been nuggets of information that maybe people can use and apply into their life from our little chat today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is the hope, right? That like, and I think with all of this, what I believe is that you can start small. You don't have to
Mhm. Do
do
it all
all of this
today.
overnight. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, with products, for instance, I mean, you can start with just one product, right? And then see
absolutely.
how that impacts your life and how you feel about it, and then move on to sort of implementing it greater and greater within your lifestyle. And I think the same with any sort of a business, right? Like if you're considering how to shift your business to be more responsible or sustainable, start with one little thing, which is doable, right? And where you can get buy-in, and then move to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Like I just don't, I think it is really hard, I would imagine, for like large institutions which have been established for, a long time, that for them to
Obviously,
move.
yeah.
And it is, but it is necessary, right? I do think that like we talked about, like that is sort of the way of the future, right? Sustainable businesses have to become more and more prevalent. And
Mhm.
even if an entire business cannot be pivoted overnight, to make those small steps towards that mission is important and requires that mindfulness, I think, in a
Yeah,
way. Um,
couldn't agree more.
yeah. I wanted to also learn from you. You are in an industry, personal products are, it's an industry which is, there's a lot of choices out there. And
Mhm.
on a daily basis, when I walk into a store, you see just a vast number of
Yeah.
options which are out there in personal products. And now with, online, you see a whole other set of products, right? Apart from what you see on shelves. How do you create, how do you go through that process of creating products which are not only distinctive, but also, ones that balance sort of
Yeah.
the values that you have with the needs of the market?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. Honestly, so our name is Bare Necessities, right? So when we think about products, we're not thinking about like cosmetics or lipsticks or things like that. We're really just thinking about from the minute someone wakes up in the morning to the minute they sleep, what are those products that they need that are just truly necessities? And what are some of those products that could really help moving the needle on kind of plastic reduction? So when you wake up in the morning, a bamboo toothbrush, maybe handcrafted soaps. We use cocoa butter from Mason and Co. Again, they're a woman-run enterprise. They, when they make their bean to bar chocolate, they have all of this cocoa butter. They don't know what to do with it. So that's an input for us, and we use that for a lot of our ingredients, and that means shampoo bars, conditioner bars. Again, really changing, like challenging the format that your personal care products need to come in a plastic bottle every month and just kind of be there to maybe us in our Indian culture love our teas and coffees and chais and all of that stuff, right? And sometimes convenience is really important. So, instead of the little tiny paper cups that we use that are unfortunately lined with plastic, we created this super cute collapsible stainless steel tumbler. And it literally looks like a keychain, and you can have it on your, bike with your bike key or whatever, and it opens up and it's literally a three-tier little cup. And then when you're done, you just literally collapse it and fasten it together, and you can wash it later. So stainless steel straws. And again, we have to make sure that everything is really designed with integrity. So it has to be 3304 stainless steel that is certified, that is food grade, that is going to be rust proof forever. Like, and steel is something that we as a South Indian culture as well have really celebrated through time, right? I mean, at my house, I have my great grandmother's, couple of items from stainless steel with her little initials on it and things like that. So yeah, so I think trying to marry the old with the new, trying to see what are those necessities that you need on a daily basis, and something that is not maybe excessive or not really that more. Oh, we have these really amazing visitors. Hello. Yeah, and that's just really our philosophy at Bare Necessities.
Amazing. Thank you. I think there's so much innovation happening in this space, which is really amazing, actually. I have to say, like, I mean, I have been coming across so many entrepreneurs actually who are doing amazing work, right? And really changing the game into terms of product and consumables and the options which are available. And it is really exciting. And I hope that I really do hope that people can keep up with it in a sense, right? And are encouraging of more businesses like your own because it is so it's really about challenging those initial assumptions of what like a cup like what you can do with a keychain, right? Or how you can, what just in terms of the mindfulness which goes into it. So I really admire that you guys are going after some of these these like you said necessities, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a really cool thing, which means that it is so meaningful for just truly for masses. um it's quite impressive and amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I guess one last question from my side is, how does the Tamara philosophy maybe has it influenced your life? And if so, how? If you can share a few words on that, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, so I think sorry, my son is going a
All
little
good.
but I think okay, all right, cool. Yes, please go. Okay, maybe I'm gonna ask you a question first before we come back to my question.
No
Um,
worries. We can even wrap up. I mean, had a really nice, fun chat. And if you want to go spend some time with your amazing son on a Sunday, I totally understand.
so I think we can get through one more question maybe. And let me ask you the question, and then I'll come back
Sure.
to my. So in terms of the coming into the next, coming into the, into the future, what do you think what is the market looking like, for conscious vegan, sustainable products and services? What does it look, what does the future look like for you and your businesses?
Sure, sure. Awesome. I'll make it nice and quick. I think the future of consumption is one that is sustainable, one that is just, one that is equitable, one that is extremely mindful, um, and kind of balances the people, planet, profit, but even purpose, and has like really, really good integrity of design. And I think the market is huge and is only going to grow because, we are currently living in the largest global garbage crisis of our lifetime. There has not been more waste on this planet than right here, right now, today. And I think all of us, whether we want to give our 8-year-old son a better planet to, live in, or my nieces and nephews, I think we are all being really kind of cognizant of that because we have enjoyed, gorgeous properties, gorgeous, hikes in nature, the beaches, and it's been clean and beautiful, and we just owe it to our future generation to make sure that we are giving them the same quality, if not better, kind of planet to live in and enjoy. So I think the market for more conscious products is only going to continue to keep growing as awareness keeps growing.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think so. I think you're absolutely right. I think that we are definitely moving in the right direction, right? I think, but I do hope that we also start encouraging more. I think COP27, for instance, happened this week, and
Yeah.
the controversies around that and things like that. But I do hope that there is this more cohesive effort, I guess, and like more conscious effort from a lot more businesses, people, consumers, governments
Yeah.
in that direction, because it is truly, as you said, right? It is all for the next generation,
Yeah.
these little kids of today and of the future. And I do think there's so much that we need to do to get to that point where we are preserving and keeping all of this safe for them. So you asked me about how does Tamara and my life sort of coincide in a
Yeah.
way.
How has maybe the philosophy of Tamara kind of influenced your life? Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I think, the thing that I've learned about, I think about, this whole idea of sustainability is really around that the idea, you need mindfulness and you need like a purpose, right? In terms of how you address sustainability. And in Tamara, I think, you know, it is a lot about how do you communicate that purpose and how do you create that idea of education, right? Around this is why we do something. And I think in my own life, I think a lot of time has gone into a lot of time has gone into trying to the same thing, right? Like the ideology of like why should we be like this? I think I spend a lot of time sort of trying to encourage like my kids or my
Yeah.
family or like the people around me to start thinking about what can we do differently, and
Mhm.
not really accept the norm of what has been, right? So even as simple as the food that we put into our bodies, or where does it come from, what's in it, what's truly in it, people practices, right? How do we treat the people that work in our homes, or
Yeah.
how do we think about education and all of these things. I think it's about the thing with Amra, what I've learned, and actually because I'm not a traditional hotelier. Like I didn't come through that typical sort of route of
Yeah.
going to hotel management school and then sort of working my way up in that sense. I think because so I have this little bit of an outsider perspective, and so it allows me to question the norm a bit
Mhm.
and continuously question that and say, but why not? Why not? Why not?
Mhm.
And so I think I do that same attitude influences my personal life, my personal choices, and encourages me to ask those questions to people that I can comfortably hold accountable, whether it's friends or family or whatever. So I do think it almost becomes like one of the same at some point, right? When you're so intrinsically involved with an organization, and in your case, a founder, like a lot of it is just you, right?
Mhm.
And similarly, I think with Amara, like of course it's grown, and I've been there through the journey. It just becomes you in a sense, and I think that's the kind of the beauty of organizations like ours, right? That
Mhm.
um, it's almost like a personification. The organization
Yeah.
itself becomes a reflection of who you are as a person, and the values that you hold dear, and vice versa. I mean, you kind of you learn so much from the organization and that
Yeah.
journey, culture building, and all of that, and that informs how you make choices about your own self and your life, and the power that you hold, and the voice that you have. And so yeah, I mean, it truly has been, it's been an incredible journey for me. I've been working with Tamara for 10 years, I guess, this year.
Mhm.
And yeah, and it really is, one of the great honors of my life, I would say, to be a leader in this capacity, and to lead an organization where I'm truly proud of what we do and who we are and the people that are with me
Mhm.
on the journey. So yeah, so it's been it's been great. Sahar, thank you so much. This has been such a lovely conversation, and I'm so glad to have been able to do it with you. And I'm also like, I'm so happy that you're in the Tamarakur and speaking to me from there, and all of that. I hope that we can, continue conversations like this and encourage more
Absolutely.
leaders, like you said, like plant a seed
Mhm.
with those who have seen this conversation or possibly who listen to it later, to know that there is so much that can be done, and we can always start small and start from somewhere, and then and make it grow. So yeah, thanks.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. So much love and respect for everything that you're building. And yeah, I hope we can continue to keep collaborating. And I had a lovely time chatting with you. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, and have fun. Enjoy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll see you when I'm back in Bangalore, perhaps.
All right.
Okay, take
Thank you
care.
for watching as
Have a
well.
good evening.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.